Hi, this is Zach Hale, and I'm going to show you this project that I've been working on and off for a while now. It involves a Arduino, some relay modules, some solenoids, and flower pots, and then also a SuperCollider that is controlling everything. So first I'll get into the hardware part. So I have this encasing here that I have the top already screwed off on. So since this is a proof of concept, a lot of this stuff is not soldered. I've actually been using these little connectors that have screws in them, but that's actually the next part of the project. Now that this is working, is to get this all soldered in. So inside the box, I have an Arduino Uno. I have this relay module, so it has 8 relays, but I'm actually only using 4 here. And then I actually disconnected a lot of things here. So right here, you'll see I have a 12-volt DC input from an adapter that I have over there, a power supply. The Arduino here is the USB port. And then I have a power on-off switch for this 12-volt. And then actually over here, so these are then connected, the relays are connected through this wire out to the solenoids. And these are, you can see this one a little better. It's just a 12-volt, 2-amp solenoid. And so I have these connectors actually so that I can transport it easier. So that was easy just to get that in there. And then I use some more of those connectors here just to connect it to some radio wire that I got from a hardware store, and then ultimately to the solenoid. And then the clay pots, this one's actually better to see. I have them somewhat suspended, so they're more resonant. So how I did that was I have this piece of wood. I have a bolt coming through the top, and then I have a washer and a nut underneath this as well to get it to the right height, and then I just secured it here. And then I have some moleskin just to make it a little less abrasive. And then at the end of the solenoid piston, I have some little wooden balls that I got from Michael's that I could put on there, so it's, again, less abrasive than metal hitting a clay pot or something. So that's all the physical, mechanical type of thing. So now we can go into the computer part. So the Arduino, my code in here is I'm using 4 pins. And right here I have, I'll talk about this later, but I'm keeping some times whenever a certain pot is triggered. So in the setup, I just set all of these pins to output. I actually think I have this reversed, but I'm analog writing 255 to turn off the relay. So to turn off put the solenoid kind of going in the off position. But for now it's working, so I didn't mess with it. And then I just start the serial port in here. So as you'll see, I'm actually sending in later, I'll show you this, but in SuperCollider, I'm sending in a number through the serial port, and that's what's triggering this. So here's my loop. So what I'm doing is, I'll get into this, but down here, it's reading the serial port and 49, 50, 51, 52. Actually, these correspond to MIDI values, because originally I had this coming from Ableton, and I didn't want to have to translate, which MIDI note I was clicking to which pot or what was going to be happening in this C code. So they're the same thing. That's the reason the numbers are they are. And then you'll just see I just correspond, which pin I want to go into. And this function down here, all it does is just do an analog write, and it goes to 0. So that's actually, like I said, maybe flips, but I'm turning it on. And then what it does is it returns the current time in milliseconds. So I keep track of that here with the different pots. And why I do that is because up here in the loop, what I do is if you triggered it and then you don't turn it off, it'll just always stay in the on position, would be that. So you only get one hit out of it. But then if you turn it on and off too quickly, it actually won't even reach the pot. So there was a sweet spot in there. I chose 20 milliseconds right here, but it could be really anything. You could play with it. So yeah, what I do is take the milliseconds and then whichever one was that I kept earlier, and if it's greater than 20 milliseconds, I just send a 255, again, which is off to the analog write. So that's the C part. Now to go into SuperCollider, actually revert this. So this code is actually on my GitHub, so you can go look at that if you want to. There is some stuff in the beginning, which is some UI work. I'm still working on that, actually. That's part of SuperCollider I don't know too well. But to go through the rest of this, at the beginning, I just have a serial port. So that's connecting to my Arduino. I have a tempo clock and some quantization. These values here are going to be, I'll show you later, but they're just a group of either times, notes, or weights that I can randomly choose from. So here you'll see 1 corresponds to here as a quarter note, and then a half, right, is going to be eighth notes, triplets, sixteenths, quintuplets, all the way up to non-tuplets, and this would be 32nd notes. The weights, I'll show this later, but I kind of use this as a way to figure out density. So if the weights are always on, these values are always going to trigger. But what I can do is make the weight go to not trigger more. So right now it's 0, but I can make it go to another value, and it's actually most of the time going to skip playing the note that it wants to. So you'll get a less dense sound. And then the notes here, again, those are those MIDI values, and it's an array of arrays. So most of the time I just want to play one note, but I did an array of array because sometimes you can play then chords. They might be a little bit off, whatever the rate is of the serial port, but that's indistinguishable to me at least. So you have those, and then here's the task that actually does it. So it just does an infinite loop over this. It chooses from the notes randomly as a p-seq, and then here it does the times, right? So that's going to be your your duration values, and then it just loops over those. And here's the rest part. So right, am I going to choose between my weights? And if the rest is 0, then play the note. Otherwise, just skip it. And then here's I based on my vibe times, which is my duration, and it just waits and then loops over again. So I'll show you what it looks like, what it sounds like. So here's my simple interface. So right now, if I click start, so that's pretty much it in its basic form. I can just show you what it's like, say, if I make it less dense. And right now I have to do this manually, but that's the hope with the UI, is that I'll be able to do this. And I could do this in real time actually too, by doing coding and kind of changing these values, but the UI would be nicer. So I'll change that to here, and let's see what it sounds like now with those weights a little different. We'll start it. All right. Oh, click stop. So there, we close out of that. And then, just to prove the point, say if I wanted to get out of here, so that would just correspond to a quarter note, and I'll put this weight all the way back up. So now this will just be straight quarter notes the entire time. And then what's also nice is I'll eventually have this up here too, but since I'm using this tempo clock, I can just change this tempo right here. So instead of 2, which is, it's based on 60, so it's 120, I can say 1.5, so that'll be about 90. Let's see. I'll change that and I can start it again. So I could be a little slower in there. But that's pretty much it. Thank you.